59. The Second Dance Song. 1. Into thine eyes gazed I lately, O life. Gold saw I gleam in thy night eyes. My heart stood still with delight. A golden bark saw I gleam on darkened waters, a sinking, drinking, re-blinking golden swing bark. At my dance-frantic foot dost thou cast a glance, a laughing, questioning, melting, thrown glance. Twice only movedst thou thy rattle with thy little hands, then did my feet swing with dance fury. My heels reared aloft, my toes they hearkened. Thee they would know. Hath not the dancer his ear in his toe? Unto thee did I spring, then fledst thou back from my bound, and towards me waved thy fleeing, flying tresses round. Away from thee did I spring, and from thy snaky tresses. Then stoodst thou there half-turned, and in thine eye caresses. With crooked glances dost thou teach me crooked courses. On crooked courses learn my feet crafty fancies. I fear thee near, I love thee far. Thy flight allureth me, thy seeking secureth me. I suffer, but for thee what would I not gladly bear? For thee, whose coldness inflameth, whose hatred misleadeth, whose flight enchaineth, whose mockery pleadeth. Who would not hate thee, thou great bindress, inwindress, temptress, seekress, findress? Who would not love thee, thou innocent, impatient, wind-swift, child-eyed sinner? Whither pullest thou me now, thou paragon and tomboy? And now foolest thou me, fleeing, thou sweet romp dost annoy. I dance after thee, I follow even faint traces lonely. Where art thou? Give me thy hand, or thy finger only. Here are caves and thickets, we shall go astray. Halt! Stand still, seest thou not owls and bats in fluttering fray? Thou bat, thou owl, thou wouldst play me foul. Where are we? From the dogs hast thou learned thus to bark and howl. Thou gnashest on me sweetly with little white teeth. Thine evil eyes shoot out upon me, thy curly little mane from underneath. This is a dance over stock and stone. I am the hunter. Wilt thou be my hound, or my chamois anon? Now beside me, and quickly, wickedly springing, now up and over. Alas, I have fallen myself over-swinging. O see me lying, thou arrogant one, and imploring grace. Gladly would I walk with thee in some lovelier place. In the paths of love, through bushes variegated, quiet, trim, or there along the lake where goldfishes dance and swim. Thou art now a-weary? There above are sheep and sunset stripes. Is it not sweet to sleep? The shepherd pipes. Thou art so very weary? I carry thee thither. Let just thine arm sink. And art thou thirsty? I should have something, but thy mouth would not like it to drink. O that cursed, nimble, supple serpent and lurking witch, where art thou gone? But in my face do I feel through my hand 2 spots and red blotches itch. I am verily weary of it, ever thy sheepish shepherd to be. Thou witch, if I have hitherto sung unto thee, now shalt thou cry unto me. To the rhythm of my whip shalt thou dance and cry. I forget not my whip, not I. 2. Then did life answer me thus, and kept thereby her fine ears closed. O Zarathustra, crack not so terribly with thy whip. Thou knowest surely that noise killeth thought, and just now there came to me such delicate thoughts. We are both of us genuine ne'er-do-wells and ne'er-do-ills. Beyond good and evil found we our island and our green meadow, we two alone. Therefore must we be friendly to each other. And even should we not love each other from the bottom of our hearts, must we then have a grudge against each other if we do not love each other perfectly? And that I am friendly to thee, and often too friendly, that knowest thou. and the reason is that I am envious of thy wisdom. Ah, this mad old fool, wisdom! If thy wisdom should one day run away from thee, then would also my love run away from thee quickly. Thereupon did life look thoughtfully behind and around, and said softly, O Zarathustra, thou art not faithful enough to me. Thou lovest me not nearly so much as thou sayest. I know thou thinkest of soon leaving me. There is an old, heavy, heavy booming clock. It boometh by night up to thy cave. When thou hearest this clock strike the hours at midnight, then thinkest thou between 1 and 12 thereon. Thou thinkest thereon, O Zarathustra, I know it, of soon leaving me. Yea, answered I hesitatingly, but thou knowest it also. And I said something into her ear, in amongst her confused, yellow, foolish tresses. Thou knowest that, O Zarathustra, that knoweth no one? And we gazed at each other and looked at the green meadow, o'er which the cool evening was just passing, and we wept together. Then, however, was life dearer unto me than all my wisdom had ever been. Thus spake Zarathustra. 3. 1. O man, take heed. 2. What saith deep midnight's voice indeed? 3. I slept my sleep. 4. From deepest dream I've woke and plead. 5. The world is deep. 6. And deeper than the day could read. 7. Deep is its woe. 8. Joy deeper still than grief can be. 9. Woe saith, hence, go. 10. But joys all want eternity. 11. Want deep, profound eternity. 12. 60. The Seven Seals, or the Yea and Amen lay. 1. If I be a diviner and full of the divining spirit which wandereth on high mountain ridges twixt two seas, wandereth twixt the past and the future as a heavy cloud, hostile to sultry plains, and to all that is weary and can neither die nor live, ready for lightning in its dark bosom, and for the redeeming flash of light, charged with lightnings which say, Yea, which laugh, Yea, ready for divining flashes of lightning. Blessed, however, is he who is thus charged, and verily long must he hang like a heavy tempest on the mountain, who shall one day kindle the light of the future. Oh, how could I not be ardent for eternity and for the marriage ring of rings, the ring of the return? Never yet have I found the woman by whom I should like to have children, unless it be this woman whom I love, for I love thee, O eternity. For I love thee, O eternity. 2. If ever my wrath hath burst graves, shifted landmarks, or rolled old shattered tables into precipitous depths, if ever my scorn hath scattered mouldered words to the winds, and if I have come like a besom to cross spiders, and as a cleansing wind to old charnel houses, if ever I have sat rejoicing where old gods lie buried, world-blessing, world-loving, beside the monuments of old world-maligners. For even churches and gods' graves do I love, if only heaven looketh through their ruined roofs with pure eyes. Gladly do I sit like grass and red poppies on ruined churches. Oh, how could I not be ardent for eternity, and for the marriage ring of rings, the ring of the return? Never yet have I found the woman by whom I should like to have children, unless it be this woman whom I love, for I love thee, O eternity. For I love thee, O eternity. 3. If ever a breath hath come to me of the creative breath, and of the heavenly necessity which compelleth even chances to dance star dances. If ever I have laughed with the laughter of the creative lightning, to which the long thunder of the deed followeth grumblingly but obediently, if ever I have played dice with the gods at the divine table of the earth, so that the earth quaked and ruptured and snorted forth fire streams, for a divine table is the earth, and trembling with new creative dictums and dice casts of the gods. Oh, how could I not be ardent for eternity, and for the marriage ring of rings, the ring of the return? Never yet have I found the woman by whom I should like to have children, unless it be this woman whom I love, for I love thee, O eternity. For I love thee, O eternity. 4. If ever I have drunk a full draught of the foaming spice and confection bowl in which all things are well mixed, if ever my hand hath mingled the furthest with the nearest, fire with spirit, joy with sorrow, and the harshest with the kindest, if I myself am a grain of the saving salt which maketh everything in the confection bowl mix well, for there is a salt which untieth good with evil, and even the evilest is worthy, as spicing and as final over-foaming. Oh, how could I not be ardent for eternity, and for the marriage ring of rings, the ring of the return? Never yet have I found the woman by whom I should like to have children, unless it be this woman whom I love, for I love thee, O eternity. For I love thee, O eternity. 5. If I be fond of the sea, and all that is sea-like, and fondest of it when it angrily contradicteth me, if the exploring delight be in me, which impelleth sails to the undiscovered, if the seafarer's delight be in my delight, if ever my rejoicing hath called out, the shore hath vanished, now hath fallen from me the last chain, the boundless roareth around me, far away sparkle for me space and time, well, cheer up, old heart. Oh, how could I not be ardent for eternity, and for the marriage ring of rings, the ring of the return? Never yet have I found the woman by whom I should like to have children, unless it be this woman whom I love, for I love thee, O eternity. For I love thee, O eternity. 6. If my virtue be a dancer's virtue, and if I have often sprung with both feet into golden emerald rapture, if my wickedness be a laughing wickedness, at home among rosebanks and hedges of lilies, for in laughter is all evil present, but it is sanctified and absolved by its own bliss. And if it be my Alpha and Omega, that everything heavy shall become light, every body a dancer, and every spirit a bird, and verily that is my Alpha and Omega. Oh, how could I not be ardent for eternity, and for the marriage ring of rings, the ring of the return? Never yet have I found the woman by whom I should like to have children, unless it be this woman whom I love, for I love thee, O eternity. For I love thee, O eternity. 7. If ever I have spread out a tranquil heaven above me, and have flown into mine own heaven with my own pinions, if I have swum playfully in profound luminous distances, and if my freedom's avian wisdom hath come to me, thus, however, speaketh avian wisdom, lo, there is no above and no below. Throw thyself about, outward, backward, thou light one, sing, speak no more. Are not all words made for the heavy? Do not all words lie to the light ones? Sing, speak no more. Oh, how could I not be ardent for eternity, and for the marriage ring of rings, the ring of the return? Never yet have I found the woman by whom I should like to have children, unless it be this woman whom I love, for I love thee, O eternity. For I love thee, O eternity. 4th and last part. Ah, where in the world have there been greater follies than with the pitiful? And what in the world hath caused more suffering than the follies of the pitiful? Woe unto all loving ones who have not an elevation which is above their pity. Thus spake the devil unto me once on a time, even God hath his hell, it is his love for man. And lately did I hear him say these words, God is dead, of his pity for man hath God died. Zarathustra, 2. The Pitiful. 61. The Honey Sacrifice. And again passed moons and years over Zarathustra's soul, and he heeded it not. His hair, however, became white. One day when he sat on a stone in front of his cave and gazed calmly into the distance, one there gazeth out on the sea, and away beyond sinuous abysses. Then went his animals thoughtfully round about him, and at last set themselves in front of him. O Zarathustra, said they, gazest thou out, perhaps, for thy happiness? Of what account is my happiness? Answered he. I have long ceased to strive any more for happiness. I strive for my work. O Zarathustra, said the animals once more, that sayest thou as one who hath overmuch of good things. Liest thou not in a sky-blue lake of happiness? Ye wags, answered Zarathustra, and smiled. How well did ye choose the simile! But ye know also that my happiness is heavy, and not like a fluid wave of water. It presseth me, and will not leave me, and is like molten pitch. Then went his animals again thoughtfully around him, and placed themselves once more in front of him. O Zarathustra, said they, it is consequently for that reason that thou thyself always becometh yellower and darker, although thy hair looketh white and flaxen. Lo, thou sittest in thy pitch. What do ye say, mine animals? Said Zarathustra, laughing. Verily I reviled when I spake of pitch. As it happeneth with me, so is it with all fruits that turn ripe. It is the honey in my veins that maketh my blood thicker, and also my soul stiller. So will it be, O Zarathustra, answered his animals, and pressed up to him. But wilt thou not today ascend a high mountain? The air is pure, and today one seeth more of the world than ever. Yea, mine animals, answered he, ye counsel admirably and according to my heart. I will today ascend a high mountain. But see that honey is there ready to hand, yellow, white, good, ice-cool, golden comb honey, for know that when aloft I will make the honey sacrifice. When Zarathustra, however, was aloft on the summit, he sent his animals home that had accompanied him, and found that he was now alone. Then he laughed from the bottom of his heart, looked around him, and spake thus, That I spake of sacrifices and honey sacrifices, it was merely a ruse in talking, and verily a useful folly. Here aloft can I now speak freer than in front of mountain caves and anchorites' domestic animals. What to sacrifice? I squander what is given me, a squanderer with 1,000 hands. How could I call that sacrificing? And when I desired honey, I only desired bait, and sweet mucus and mucilage, for which even the mouths of growling bears and strange, sulky, evil birds water. The best bait, as huntsmen and fishermen require it, for if the world be as a gloomy forest of animals, and a pleasure ground for all wild huntsmen, it seemeth to me rather, and preferably, a fathomless rich sea. A sea full of many-hued fishes and crabs, for which even the gods might long, and might be tempted to become fishers in it and casters of nets, so rich is the world in wonderful things, great and small. Especially the human world, the human sea, towards it do I now throw out my golden angle-rod and say, Open up, thou human abyss! Open up and throw unto me thy fish and shining crabs. With my best bait shall I allure to myself today the strangest human fish. My happiness itself do I throw out into all places far and wide, twixt Orient, noontide, and Occident, to see if many human fish will not learn to hug and tug at my happiness. Until, biting at my sharp hidden hooks, they have to come up unto my height, the motliest abyss groundlings, to the wickedest of all fishers of men. For this am I from the heart, and from the beginning, drawing, hither drawing, upward drawing, up bringing, a drawer, a trainer, a training master, who not in vain counselled himself once on a time, become what thou art. Thus may men now come up to me, for as yet do I await the signs that it is time for my down-going. As yet do I not myself go down, as I must do, amongst men. Therefore do I here wait, crafty and scornful upon high mountains, no impatient one, no patient one, rather one who hath even unlearnt patience, because he no longer suffereth. For my fate giveth me time. It hath forgotten me, perhaps, or doth it sit behind a big stone and catch flies? And verily I am well disposed to mine eternal fate, because it doth not hound and hurry me, but leaveth me time for merriment and mischief, so that I have today ascended this high mountain to catch fish. Did ever any one catch fish upon high mountains? And though it be a folly, what I here seek and do, it is better so than that down below I should become solemn with waiting and green and yellow. A posturing wrath snorter with waiting, a holy howl-storm from the mountains, an impatient one that shouteth down into the valleys, Hearken, else I will scourge you with the scourge of God. Not that I would have a grudge against such wrathful ones on that account. They are well enough for laughter to me. Impatient must they now be, those big alarm drums, which find a voice now or never. Myself, however, and my fate, we do not talk to the present, neither do we talk to the never. For talking we have patience and time, and more than time. For one day must it yet come, and may not pass by. What must one day come and may not pass by? Our great huzzah, that is to say, our great remote human kingdom, the Zarathustra kingdom of 1,000 years. How remote may such remoteness be? What doth it concern me? But on that account it is none the less sure unto me. With both feet stand I secure on this ground. On an eternal ground, on hard primary rock, on this highest, hardest primary mountain ridge, unto which all winds come, as unto the storm parting, asking where, and whence, and whither. Here, laugh, laugh, my hearty, healthy wickedness, from high mountains cast down thy glittering scorn laughter, allure for me with thy glittering the finest human fish. And whatever belongeth unto me in all seas, my in and for me in all things, fish that out for me, bring that up to me, for that do I wait, the wickedest of all fish-catchers. Out, out, my fishing hook, in and down, thou bait of my happiness, drip thy sweetest dew, thou honey of my heart, bite, my fishing hook, into the belly of all black affliction. Look out, mine eye, oh, how many seas round about me, what dawning human futures, and above me, what rosy red stillness, what unclouded silence. 62. The Cry of Distress. The next day sat Zarathustra again on the stone in front of his cave, whilst his animals roved about in the world outside to bring home new food, also new honey, for Zarathustra had spent and wasted the old honey to the very last particle. When he thus sat, however, with a stick in his hand, tracing the shadow of his figure on the earth, and reflecting, verily not upon himself and his shadow, all at once he startled and shrank back, for he saw another shadow beside his own. And when he hastily looked around and stood up, behold, there stood the soothsayer beside him, the same whom he had once given to eat and drink at his table, the proclaimer of the great weariness, who taught, all is alike, nothing is worth while, the world is without meaning, knowledge strangleth. But his face had changed since then, and when Zarathustra looked into his eyes, his heart was startled once more. So much evil announcement and ashy grey lightnings passed over that countenance. The soothsayer, who had perceived what went on in Zarathustra's soul, wiped his face with his hand, as if he would wipe out the impression. The same did also Zarathustra, And when both of them had thus silently composed and strengthened themselves, they gave each other the hand, as a token that they wanted once more to recognize each other. "Welcome hither," said Zarathustra, "thou soothsayer of the great weariness. Not in vain shalt thou once have been my messmate and guest. Eat and drink also with me today, and forgive it that a cheerful old man sitteth with thee at table." "A cheerful old man," answered the soothsayer, shaking his head. "But whoever thou art or wouldst be, O Zarathustra, thou hast been here aloft the longest time. In a little while thy bark shall no longer rest on dry land." "Do I then rest on dry land?" asked Zarathustra, laughing. "The waves around thy mountain," answered the soothsayer, "rise and rise, the waves of great distress and affliction. They will soon raise thy bark also and carry thee away." Thereupon was Zarathustra silent, and wondered. "Dost thou still hear nothing?" continued the soothsayer. "Doth it not rush and roar out of the depth?" Zarathustra was silent once more and listened. Then heard he a long, long cry, which the abysses threw to one another and passed on, for none of them wished to retain it, so evil did it sound. "Thou ill announcer," said Zarathustra at last, "that is a cry of distress, and the cry of a man. It may come perhaps out of a black sea. But what doth human distress matter to me? My last sin, which hath been reserved for me, knowest thou what it is called?" "Pity," answered the soothsayer from an overflowing heart, and raised both his hands aloft. "O Zarathustra, I have come that I may seduce thee to thy last sin." And hardly had those words been uttered when there sounded the cry once more, and longer and more alarming than before, also much nearer. "Hearest thou? Hearest thou, O Zarathustra?" called out the soothsayer. "The cry concerneth thee, it calleth thee. Come, 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 it is time, it is the highest time." Zarathustra was silent thereupon, confused and staggered. At last he asked, like one who hesitateth in himself, "And who is it that there calleth me?" "But thou knowest it certainly," answered the soothsayer warmly. "Why dost thou conceal thyself? It is the higher man that crieth for thee." "The higher man?" cried Zarathustra, horror-stricken. "What wanteth he? What wanteth he? The higher man? What wanteth he here?" And his skin covered with perspiration. The soothsayer, however, did not heed Zarathustra's alarm, but listened and listened in the downward direction. When, however, it had been still there for a long while, he looked behind and saw Zarathustra standing trembling. "O Zarathustra," he began with sorrowful voice, "thou dost not stand there like one whose happiness maketh him giddy. Thou wilt have to dance, lest thou tumble down. But although thou shouldst dance before me, and leap all thy side leaps, no one may say unto me, Behold, here danceth the last joyous man. In vain would any one come to this height who sought him here. Caves would he find, indeed, and back caves, hiding places for hidden ones, but not lucky mines, nor treasure chambers, nor new gold veins of happiness. Happiness! How indeed could one find happiness among such buried alive and solitary ones? Must I yet seek the last happiness on the happy isles, and far away among forgotten seas? But all is alike. Nothing is worth while. No seeking is of service. There are no longer any happy isles. Thus sighed the soothsayer with his last sigh. However, Zarathustra again became serene and assured, like one who hath come out of a deep chasm into the light. "Nay, nay, 3 times nay," exclaimed he with a strong voice, and stroked his beard. "That do I know better. There are still happy isles. Silence thereon, thou sighing sorrow-sack. Cease to splash thereon, thou rain-cloud of the forenoon. Do I not already stand here, wet with thy misery and drenched like a dog? Now do I shake myself and run away from thee, that I may again become dry. Thereat mayest thou not wonder. Do I seem to thee discourteous? Here, however, is my court. But as regards the higher man, well, I shall seek him at once in those forests. From thence came his cry. Perhaps he is there hard beset by an evil beast. He is in my domain, therein shall he receive no scathe, and verily there are many evil beasts about me. With those words Zarathustra turned around to depart. Then said the soothsayer, O Zarathustra, thou art a rogue. I know it well. Thou wouldst fain be rid of me. Rather wouldst thou run into the forest and lay snares for evil beasts. But what good will it do thee? In the evening wilt thou have me again. In thine own cave will I sit, patient and heavy like a block, and wait for thee. So be it, shouted back Zarathustra as he went away, and what is mine in my cave belongeth also unto thee, my guest. Shouldst thou, however, find honey therein, well, just lick it up, thou growling bear, and sweeten thy soul, for in the evening we want both to be in good spirits. In good spirits and joyful, because this day hath come to an end, and thou thyself shalt dance to my lays as my dancing bear. Thou dost not believe this? Thou shakest thy head? Well, cheer up, old bear, but I also am a soothsayer. Thus spake Zarathustra. 63. Talk with the Kings. 1. Ere Zarathustra had been an hour on his way in the mountains and forests, he saw all at once a strange procession. Right on the path which he was about to descend came 2 kings walking, bedecked with crowns and purple girdles, and variegated like flamingos. They drove before them a laden ass. What do these kings want in my domain? Said Zarathustra in astonishment to his heart, and hid himself hastily behind a thicket. When, however, the kings approached to him, he said half aloud, like one speaking only to himself, Strange, strange. How doth this harmonize? 2 kings do I see, and only 1 ass. Thereupon the 2 kings made a halt. They smiled and looked towards the spot whence the voice proceeded, and afterwards looked into each other's faces. Such things do we also think among ourselves, said the king on the right, but we do not utter them. The king on the left, however, shrugged his shoulders and answered, That may perhaps be a goatherd, or an anchorite who hath lived too long among rocks and trees, for no society at all spoileth also good manners. Good manners? Replied angrily and bitterly the other king. What then do we run out of the way of? Is it not good manners, our good society? Better verily to live among anchorites and goatherds than with our gilded, false, over-rouged populace, though it call itself good society. Though it call itself nobility, but there all is false and foul, above all the blood, thanks to old evil diseases and worse curers. The best and dearest to me at present is still a sound peasant, coarse, artful, obstinate, and enduring. That is at present the noblest type. The peasant is at present the best, and the peasant type should be master. But it is the kingdom of the populace. I no longer allow anything to be imposed upon me. The populace, however, that meaneth hodgepodge. Populace hodgepodge, therein is everything mixed with everything, saint and swindler, gentleman and Jew, and every beast out of Noah's ark. Good manners. Everything is false and foul with us. No one knoweth any longer how to reverence. It is that, precisely, that we run away from. They are fulsome, obtrusive dogs. They gild palm leaves. This loathing choketh me, that we kings ourselves have become false, draped and disguised with the old faded pomp of our ancestors, showpieces for the stupidest, the craftiest, and whosoever at present trafficketh for power. We are not the first men, and have nevertheless to stand for them. Of this imposture have we at last become weary and disgusted. From the rabble have we gone out of the way, from all those bawlers and scribe blowflies, from the trader stench, the ambition fidgeting, the bad breath. Fie to live among the rabble! Fie to stand for the first men among the rabble. Ah, loathing, loathing, loathing! What doth it now matter about us kings? Thine old sickness seizeth thee, said here the king on the left. Thy loathing seizeth thee, my poor brother. Thou knowest, however, that someone heareth us. Immediately thereupon, Zarathustra, who had opened ears and eyes to this talk, rose from his hiding-place, advanced towards the kings, and thus began, He who hearkeneth unto you, he who gladly hearkeneth unto you, is called Zarathustra. I am Zarathustra, who once said, What doth it now matter about kings? Forgive me, I rejoiced when ye said to each other, What doth it matter about us kings? Here, however, is my domain and jurisdiction. What may ye be seeking in my domain? Perhaps, however, ye have found on your way what I seek, namely the higher man. When the kings heard this, they beat upon their breasts, and said with one voice, We are recognized. With the sword of thine utterance severest thou the thickest darkness of our hearts. Thou hast discovered our distress, for lo, we are on our way to find the higher man. The man that is higher than we, although we are kings. To him do we convey this ass, for the highest man shall also be the highest lord on earth. There is no sorer misfortune in all human destiny than when the mighty of the earth are not also the first men. Then everything becometh false and distorted and monstrous. And when they are even the last men, and more beast than man, then riseth and riseth the populace in honour, and at last saith even the populace virtue, Lo, I alone am virtue. What have I just heard? Answered Zarathustra. What wisdom in kings! I am enchanted, and verily I have already promptings to make a rhyme thereon. Even if it should happen to be a rhyme not suited for everyone's ears, I unlearned long ago to have consideration for long ears. Well then, well now. Here, however, it happened that the ass also found utterance. It said distinctly and with malevolence, Yea. 'Twas once, methinks, year one of our blessed Lord, drunk without wine, the Sibyl thus deplored, How ill things go, decline, decline, ne'er sank the world so low. Rome now hath turned harlot and harlot stew, Rome's Caesar a beast, and God hath turned Jew. 2. With those rhymes of Zarathustra the kings were delighted. The king on the right, however, said, O Zarathustra, how well it was that we set out to see thee. For thine enemies showed us thy likeness in their mirror. There lookedst thou with the grimace of a devil, and sneeringly, so that we were afraid of thee. But what good did it do? Always didst thou prick us anew in heart and ear with thy sayings. Then did we say at last, What doth it matter how he look? We must hear him who teacheth, Ye shall love peace as a means to new wars, and the short peace more than the long. No one ever spake such warlike words. What is good? To be brave is good. It is the good war that halloweth every cause. O Zarathustra, our father's blood stirred in our veins at such words. It was like the voice of spring to old wine casks. When the swords ran among one another like red spotted serpents, then did our fathers become fond of life. The sun of every peace seemed to them languid and lukewarm. The long peace, however, made them ashamed. How they sighed, our fathers, when they saw on the wall brightly furbished, dried-up swords. Like those they thirsted for war, for a sword thirsteth to drink blood, and sparkleth with desire. When the kings thus discoursed and talked eagerly of the happiness of their fathers, there came upon Zarathustra no little desire to mock at their eagerness, for evidently they were very peaceable kings whom he saw before him, kings with old and refined features. But he restrained himself. Well, said he, thither leadeth the way, there lieth the cave of Zarathustra, and this day is to have a long evening. At present, however, a cry of distress calleth me hastily away from you. It will honour my cave if kings want to sit and wait in it, but to be sure ye will have to wait long. Well, what of that? Where doth one at present learn better to wait than at courts? And the whole virtue of kings that hath remained unto them, is it not called today ability to wait? Thus spake Zarathustra. 64. The Leech. And Zarathustra went thoughtfully on, further and lower down, through forests and past moory bottoms. As it happeneth, however, to every one who meditateth upon hard matters, he trod thereby unawares upon a man. And lo, there spurted into his face all at once a cry of pain, and 2 curses, and 20 bad invectives, so that in his fright he raised his stick, and also struck the trodden one. Immediately afterwards, however, he regained his composure, and his heart laughed at the folly he had just committed. "Pardon me," said he to the trodden one, who had got up enraged, and had seated himself. "Pardon me, and hear first of all a parable. As a wanderer who dreameth of remote things on a lonesome highway, runneth unawares against a sleeping dog, a dog which lieth in the sun. As both of them then start up and snap at each other, like deadly enemies, those 2 beings mortally frightened, so did it happen unto us. And yet, how little was lacking for them to caress each other, that dog and that lonesome one. Are they not both lonesome ones? Whoever thou art, said the trodden one, still enraged, thou treadest also too nigh me with thy parable, and not only with thy foot. Lo, am I then a dog? And thereupon the sitting one got up, and pulled his naked arm out of the swamp. For at first he had lain outstretched on the ground, hidden and indiscernible, like those who lie in wait for swamp game. But whatever art thou about? Called out Zarathustra in alarm, for he saw a deal of blood streaming over the naked arm. What hath hurt thee? Hath an evil beast bit thee, thou unfortunate one? The bleeding one laughed, still angry. What matter is it to thee? Said he, and was about to go on. Here am I at home and in my province. Let him question me whoever will. To a dolt, however, I shall hardly answer. Thou art mistaken, said Zarathustra sympathetically, and held him fast. Thou art mistaken. Here thou art not at home, but in my domain, and therein shall no one receive any hurt. Call me, however, what thou wilt. I am who I must be. I call myself Zarathustra. Well, up thither is the way to Zarathustra's cave. It is not far. Wilt thou not attend to thy wounds at my home? It hath gone badly with thee, thou unfortunate one, in this life. First a beast bit thee, and then a man trod upon thee. When, however, the trodden one had heard the name of Zarathustra, he was transformed. What happeneth unto me? He exclaimed. Who preoccupieth me so much in this life as this one man, namely Zarathustra, and that one animal liveth on blood, the leech? For the sake of the leech did I lie here by this swamp, like a fisher, and already had mine outstretched arm been bitten 10 times, when there biteth a still finer leech at my blood, Zarathustra himself. O happiness, O miracle! Praised be this day which enticed me into the swamp. Praised be the best, the livest cupping-glass that at present liveth. Praised be the great conscience-leech Zarathustra. Thus spake the trodden one, and Zarathustra rejoiced at his words, and their refined, reverential style. Who art thou? Asked he, and gave him his hand. There is much to clear up and elucidate between us, but already methinketh pure, clear day is dawning. I am the spiritually conscientious one, answered he who was asked, and in matters of the spirit it is difficult for anyone to take it more rigorously, more restrictedly, and more severely than I, except him from whom I learnt it, Zarathustra himself. Better know nothing than half know many things. Better be a fool on one's own account than a sage on other people's approbation. I go to the basis. What matter if it be great or small, if it be called swamp or sky? A handbreadth of basis is enough for me, if it be actually basis and ground. A handbreadth of basis, thereon can one stand. In the true knowing knowledge there is nothing great and nothing small. Then thou art perhaps an expert on the leech, asked Zarathustra, and thou investigatest the leech to its ultimate basis, thou conscientious one. O Zarathustra, answered the trodden one, that would be something immense. How could I presume to do so? That, however, of which I am master and knower is the brain of the leech. That is my world. And it is also a world. Forgive it, however, that my pride here findeth expression, for here I have not mine equal. Therefore said I, here am I at home. How long have I investigated this one thing, the brain of the leech, so that here the slippery truth might no longer slip from me. Here is my domain. For the sake of this did I cast everything else aside. For the sake of this did everything else become indifferent to me, and close beside my knowledge lieth my black ignorance. My spiritual conscience requireth from me that it should be so, that I should know one thing, and not know all else. They are a loathing unto me all the semi-spiritual, or the hazy, hovering, and visionary. Where mine honesty ceaseth, there am I blind, and want also to be blind. Where I want to know, however, there want I also to be honest, namely severe, rigorous, restricted, cruel, and inexorable. Because thou once saidest, O Zarathustra, spirit is life, which itself cutteth into life. That led and allured me to thy doctrine, and verily with mine own blood have I increased mine own knowledge. As the evidence indicateth, broke in Zarathustra, for still was the blood flowing down on the naked arm of the conscientious one, for there had 10 leeches bitten into it. O thou strange fellow, how much doth this very evidence teach me, namely thou thyself, and not all, perhaps, might I pour into thy rigorous ear. Well then, we part here, but I would fain find thee again. Up thither is the way to my cave. Tonight shalt thou there be my welcome guest. Fain would I also make amends to thy body for Zarathustra treading upon thee with his feet. I think about that. Just now, however, a cry of distress calleth me hastily away from thee. Thus spake Zarathustra. 65. The Magician. 1. When, however, Zarathustra had gone round a rock, then saw he on the same path, not far below him, a man who threw his limbs about like a maniac, and at last tumbled to the ground on his belly. Halt, said then Zarathustra to his heart, he there must surely be the higher man. From him came that dreadful cry of distress. I will see if I can help him. When, however, he ran to the spot where the man lay on the ground, he found a trembling old man with fixed eyes, and in spite of all Zarathustra's efforts to lift him and set him again on his feet, it was all in vain. The unfortunate one also did not seem to notice that someone was beside him. On the contrary, he continually looked around with moving gestures, like one forsaken and isolated from all the world. At last, however, after much trembling and convulsion, and curling himself up, he began to lament thus. Who warmth me, who loveth me still, give ardent fingers, give heartening charcoal warmers, prone, outstretched, trembling, like him half dead and cold, whose feet won warmth, and shaken, by unfamiliar fevers, shivering with sharpened icy cold frost arrows, by thee pursued my fancy, ineffable, recondite, sore frightening, thou huntsman hind the cloud banks. Now lightning struck by thee, thou mocking eye that me in darkness watcheth, thus do I lie, bend myself, twist myself convulsed, with all eternal torture, and smitten by thee, cruelest huntsman, thou unfamiliar god. Smite deeper, smite yet once more, pierce through and rend my heart. What mean'th this torture with dull indented arrows? Why look'st thou thither, of human pain not weary, with mischief-loving, godly flash glances? Not murder wilt thou, but torture. Torture? For why me torture, thou mischief-loving, unfamiliar god? Ha ha! Thou stealest nigh in midnight's gloomy hour. What wilt thou? Speak! Thou crowdst me, pressest. Ha! Now far too closely. Thou hearst me breathing, thou o'erhearst my heart, thou ever jealous one. Of what, pray, ever jealous? Off, off. For why the ladder? Wouldst thou get in? To heart in clamber, to mine own secrets, conceptions in clamber. Shameless one, thou unknown one, thief, what seek'st thou by thy stealing? What seek'st thou by thy hearkening? What seek'st thou by thy torturing, thou torturer, thou hangman god? Or shall I, as the mastiffs do, roll me before thee, and cringing, enraptured, frantical, my tail friendly waggle? In vain, goad further, cruelest goader. No dog, thy game just am I, cruelest huntsman. Thy proudest of captives, thou robber hind the cloud banks, speak finally, thou lightning-veiled one, thou unknown one, speak. What wilt thou, highway ambusher, from me? What wilt thou, unfamiliar god? What? Ransom gold? How much of ransom gold? Solicit much, that biddeth my pride, and be concise, that biddeth mine other pride. Ha ha! Me want'st thou, me, entire? Ha ha! And torturest me, fool that thou art. Dead torturest quite my pride? Give love to me, who warmth me still, who loveth me still. Give ardent fingers, give heartening charcoal warmers, give me the lonesomest, the ice, sevenfold frozen ice. For very enemies, for foes doth make one thirst. Give, yield to me, cruelest foe, thyself. Away! There fled he surely, my final only comrade, my greatest foe, mine unfamiliar, my hangman god. Nay, come thou back, with all of thy great tortures, to me the last of lonesome ones. O come thou back. All my hot tears in streamlets trickle their course to thee, and all my final hearty fervour upgloweth to thee. O come thou back, mine unfamiliar god, my pain, my final bliss. 2. Here, however, Zarathustra could no longer restrain himself. He took his staff and struck the wailer with all his might. "Stop this!" cried he to him with wrathful laughter. "Stop this, thou stage player, thou false coiner, thou liar from the very heart. I know thee well. I will soon make warm legs to thee, thou evil magician. I know well how to make it hot for such as thou." "Leave off," said the old man, and sprang up from the ground. "Strike me no more, O Zarathustra. I did it only for amusement. That kind of thing belongeth to mine art. Thee thyself I wanted to put to the proof when I gave this performance, and verily thou hast well detected me. But thou thyself hast given me no small proof of thyself. Thou art hard, thou wise Zarathustra. Hard strikest thou with thy truths. Thy cudgel forceth from me this truth." "Flatter not," answered Zarathustra, still excited and frowning. "Thou stage player from the heart, thou art false. Why speakest thou of truth? Thou peacock of peacocks, thou sea of vanity, what didst thou represent before me, thou evil magician? Whom was I meant to believe in when thou wailedst in such wise?" "The penitent in spirit," said the old man. "It was him I represented. Thou thyself once devisedst this expression. The poet and magician who at last turneth his spirit against himself, the transformed one who freezeth to death by his bad science and conscience. And just acknowledge it. It was long, O Zarathustra, before thou discoveredst my trick and lie. Thou believedst in my distress when thou heldest my head with both thy hands. I heard thee lament, 'We have loved him too little,' because I so far deceived thee, my wickedness rejoiced in me." "Thou mayest have deceived subtler ones than I," said Zarathustra sternly. "I am not on my guard against deceivers. I have to be without precaution. So willeth my lot. Thou, however, must deceive. So far do I know thee. Thou must ever be equivocal, trivical, quadrivical, and quinquivocal. Even what thou hast now confessed is not nearly true enough nor false enough for me. Thou bad false coiner, how couldst thou do otherwise? My very malady wouldst thou whitewash if thou showed thyself naked to the physician. Thus didst thou whitewash thy lie before me when thou saidst, I did so only for amusement. There was also seriousness therein. Thou art something of a penitent in spirit. I divine thee well. Thou hast become the enchanter of all the world. But for thyself thou hast no lie or artifice left. Thou art disenchanted to thyself. Thou hast reaped disgust as thy one truth. No word in thee is any longer genuine, but thy mouth is so. That is to say, the disgust that cleaveth unto thy mouth. Who art thou at all? Cried here the old magician with defiant voice, who dareth to speak thus unto me, the greatest man now living? And a green flash shot from his eye at Zarathustra, but immediately after he changed, and said sadly, Ah, Zarathustra, I am weary of it. I am disgusted with mine arts. I am not great. Why do I dissemble? But thou knowest it well. I sought for greatness. A great man I wanted to appear, and persuaded many. But the lie hath been beyond my power. On it do I collapse. Oh, Zarathustra, everything is a lie in me. But that I collapse, this, my collapsing, is genuine. It honoureth thee, said Zarathustra gloomily, looking down with sidelong glance. It honoureth thee that thou soughtest for greatness, but it betrayeth thee also. Thou art not great. Thou bad old magician, that is the best and the honestest thing I honour in thee, that thou hast become weary of thyself, and hast expressed it. I am not great. Therein do I honour thee as a penitent in spirit, and although only for the twinkling of an eye, in that one moment wast thou genuine. But tell me, what seekest thou here in my forests and rocks? And if thou hast put thyself in my way, what proof of me wouldst thou have? Wherein didst thou put me to the test? Thus spake Zarathustra, and his eyes sparkled. But the old magician kept silence for a while. Then said he, Did I put thee to the test? I seek only. O Zarathustra, I seek a genuine one, a right one, a simple one, an unequivocal one, a man of perfect honesty, a vessel of wisdom, a saint of knowledge, a great man. Knowest thou it not, O Zarathustra? I seek Zarathustra. And here there arose a long silence between them. Zarathustra, however, became profoundly absorbed in thought, so that he shut his eyes. But afterwards, coming back to the situation, he grasped the hand of the magician and said, full of politeness and policy, Well, up thither leadeth the way. There is the cave of Zarathustra. In it mayest thou seek him whom thou wouldst fain find. And ask counsel of mine animals, mine eagle and my serpent. They shall help thee to seek. My cave, however, is large. I myself, to be sure, I have as yet seen no great man. That which is great, the acutest eye is at present insensible to it. It is the kingdom of the populace. Many a one have I found who stretched and inflated himself, and the people cried, Behold a great man! But what good do all bellows do? The wind cometh out at last. At last bursteth the frog, which hath inflated itself too long. Then cometh out the wind. To prick a swollen one in the belly, I call good pastime. Hear that, ye boys! Our today is of the populace, who still knoweth what is great and what is small, who could there seek successfully for greatness. A fool only, it succeedeth with fools. Thou seekest for great men, thou strange fool? Who taught that to thee? Is today the time for it? O thou bad seeker, why dost thou tempt me? Thus spake Zarathustra, comforted in his heart, and went laughing on his way. 66. Out of service. Not long, however, after Zarathustra had freed himself from the magician, he again saw a person sitting beside the path which he followed, namely a tall, black man with a haggard, pale countenance. This man grieved him exceedingly. "Alas," said he to his heart, "there sitteth disguised affliction. Methinketh he is of the type of the priests. What do they want in my domain? What? Hardly have I escaped from that magician, and must another necromancer again run across my path? Some sorcerer with laying on of hands, some sombre wonder-worker by the grace of God, some anointed world-maligner, whom may the devil take. But the devil is never at the place which would be his right place. He always cometh too late, that cursed dwarf and club-foot." Thus cursed Zarathustra impatiently in his heart, and considered how, with averted look, he might slip past the black man. But behold, it came about otherwise, for at the same moment had the sitting one already perceived him, and not unlike one whom an unexpected happiness overtaketh, he sprang to his feet, and went straight toward Zarathustra. "Whoever thou art, thou traveller," said he, "help a strayed one, a seeker, an old man, who may here easily come to grief. The world here is strange to me and remote. Wild beasts also did I hear howling, and he who could have given me protection, he is himself no more. I was seeking the pious man, a saint and an anchorite, who, alone in his forest, had not yet heard of what all the world knoweth at present." "What doth all the world know at present?" asked Zarathustra. "Perhaps that the old God no longer liveth, in whom all the world once believed?" "Thou sayest it," answered the old man sorrowfully, "and I served that old God until his last hour. Now, however, am I out of service, without master, and yet not free. Likewise am I no longer merry even for an hour, except it be in recollections. Therefore did I ascend into these mountains, that I might finally have a festival for myself once more, as becometh an old pope and church father, for know it that I am the last pope, a festival of pious recollections and divine services. Now, however, is he himself dead, the most pious of men, the saint in the forest, who praised his God constantly with singing and mumbling. He himself found I no longer when I found his cot, but 2 wolves found I therein, which howled on account of his death, for all animals loved him. Then did I haste away. Had I thus come in vain into these forests and mountains? Then did my heart determine that I should seek another, the most pious of all those who believe not in God. My heart determined that I should seek Zarathustra." Thus spake the hoary man, and gazed with keen eyes at him who stood before him. Zarathustra, however, seized the hand of the old pope, and regarded it a long while with admiration. "Lo, thou venerable one," said he then, "what a fine and long hand! That is the hand of one who hath ever dispensed blessings. Now, however, doth it hold fast him whom thou seekest, me, Zarathustra. It is I, the ungodly Zarathustra, who saith, 'Who is ungodlier than I, that I may enjoy his teaching?'" Thus spake Zarathustra, and penetrated with his glances the thoughts and arrear thoughts of the old pope. At last the latter began, "He who most loved and possessed him hath now also lost him most. Lo, I myself am surely the most godless of us at present, but who could rejoice at that?" "Thou servedst him to the last?" asked Zarathustra thoughtfully, after a deep silence. "Thou knowest how he died? Is it true what they say, that sympathy choked him? That he saw how man hung on the cross and could not endure it? That his love to man became his hell and at last his death?" The old pope, however, did not answer, but looked aside timidly with a painful and gloomy expression. "Let him go," said Zarathustra, after prolonged meditation, still looking the old man straight in the eye. "Let him go. He is gone. And though it honoureth thee that thou speakest only in praise of this dead one, yet thou knowest, as well as I, who he was, and that he went curious ways. To speak before 3 eyes, said the old Pope cheerfully, he was blind of 1 eye. In divine matters I am more enlightened than Zarathustra himself, and may well be so. My love served him long years, my will followed all his will. A good servant, however, knoweth everything, and many a thing even which a master hideth from himself. He was a hidden God, full of secrecy. Verily he did not come by his Son otherwise than by secret ways. At the door of his faith standeth adultery. Whoever extolleth him as a God of love doth not think highly enough of love itself. Did not that God want also to be judge? But the loving one loveth irrespective of reward and requital. When he was young, that God out of the Orient, then was he harsh and revengeful, and built himself a hell for the delight of his favourites. At last, however, he became old and soft and mellow and pitiful, more like a grandfather than a father, but most like a tottering old grandmother. There did he sit shrivelled in his chimney-corner, fretting on account of his weak legs, world-weary, will-weary, and one day he suffocated of his all too great pity. Thou old Pope, said here Zarathustra, interposing, hast thou seen that with thine eyes? It could well have happened in that way and also otherwise. When gods die, they always die many kinds of death. Well, at all events, one way or other, he is gone. He was counter to the taste of mine ears and eyes. Worse than that, I should not like to say against him. I love everything that looketh bright, and speaketh honestly. But he, thou knowest it, forsooth, thou old priest, there was something of thy type in him, the priest type. He was equivocal. He was also indistinct. How he raged at us, this wrath-snorter, because we understood him badly. But why did he not speak more clearly? And if the fault lay in our ears, why did he give us ears that heard him badly? If there was dirt in our ears, well, who put it in them? Too much miscarried with him, this potter who had not learned thoroughly. That he took revenge on his pots and creations, however, because they turned out badly, that was a sin against good taste. There is also good taste in piety. This, at last, said, away with such a God. Better to have no God, better to set up destiny on one's own account, better to be a fool, better to be God one's self. What do I hear? Said then the old Pope with intent ears. O Zarathustra, thou art more pious than thou believest, with such an unbelief. Some God in thee hath converted thee to thine ungodliness. Is it not thy piety itself which no longer letteth thee believe in a God? And thine over-great honesty will yet lead thee even beyond good and evil. Behold, what hath been reserved for thee. Thou hast eyes and hands and mouth, which have been predestined for blessing from eternity. One doth not bless with the hand alone. Nigh unto thee, though thou professest to be the ungodliest one, I feel a hale and holy odour of long benedictions. I feel glad and grieved thereby. Let me be thy guest, O Zarathustra, for a single night. Nowhere on earth shall I now feel better than with thee. Amen. So shall it be, said Zarathustra with great astonishment. Up thither leadeth the way, there lieth the cave of Zarathustra. Gladly, forsooth, would I conduct thee thither myself, thou venerable one, for I love all pious men. But now a cry of distress calleth me hastily away from thee. In my domain shall no one come to grief. My cave is a good haven, and best of all would I like to put every sorrowful one again on firm land and firm legs. Who, however, could take thy melancholy off thy shoulders? For that I am too weak. Long verily should we have to wait until someone reawoke thy God for thee. For that old God liveth no more. He is indeed dead. Thus spake Zarathustra.